down and put in these large integrations and stuff. And they wanted me to come out and work on this new one, right? And it was in the sales stage. They hadn't closed the deal yet. And I looked at it, and it was, I don't know, about $300 million worth of business. For a company that was maybe making $300 million in revenue a year. And I'm thinking, putting the system in, maybe this isn't going to work very well. How are they going to get a return on their investment? That was one thing that worried me. The other thing that worried me was they had a legitimate security product. I can't go into detail on it, but it was a consumer security product. So of course I went to their website as soon as I found out who the client was. And they had that, but then they had a second advertisement on their page for electronic dog collars. And I thought, this is not a good sign. Electronic dog collars, I don't know. You know, does this make any sense to you? You know, it just was odd. So I was starting to get weird vibes with it. And then I was talking to the sales guy that was selling the deal, and he was kind of funny. Where he was kind of pushing, you know, when somebody's really pushing you in a hurry to do things fast, that's often because they're trying to get you to do something you shouldn't do. So they try to rush in. So I had to deal with salespeople that wanted to close the deal, and at the same time, the customer has to be well served. And there were just all these, and then we had people on the bench. We had people that were supposed to do work, but there was no work for them at the time. There was huge pressure to get them off the bench and get working. And they were trying to find some way to build them ahead of time. And there's just all this swirling ball of interests. Have you been in this kind of thing at all? Anybody? Okay. If you haven't, you're lucky. As you get into the bigger stuff, you start to see this. It's a swirling ball of interest. And when that happens, it's very, very hard to deal with it. I mean, government stuff, I don't have personal experience with it, but from what I've read, there's a lot of that. I have a friend that works in security out in the NSA and tells me there's some politics. We used to call this just politics. But when you're managing projects, you have to be able to kind of see all this happening. So at project inception or initiation, right there, this project may be bad from birth. And if it's bad from birth, you're already in conflict management. There's nothing you can do about it. You're already there. And so what are you going to do? There are situations where you can say, well, I don't want to do this one. Assign somebody else. And they may let you. Maybe. I haven't been that lucky. In this one, by the way, what happened was that at the very last minute, it turned out that the salesman had not been talking to the right guy, and the president of the company, the client company, shut it down and said, we're not doing it because it's not cheap enough. And we couldn't get it any cheaper. So what do you think we did? Went back and tried to figure out some way to make it cheaper, and they kept pushing, and it fell over dead enough that I didn't end up having to do it. But the point is, on those, you get these things where it'll be bad from birth. Second area is scope, and this is a perfect sequence. A lot of scope isn't properly defined. If you don't know what the goal is, you've got a little chance of actually getting it. So people are confused, and they'll do a lot of hand waving. I worked on a deal where we had an outside company, we had a I don't want to say partner because that makes it sound like we actually got along. This other company was contracted to do the requirements, but we were contracted to do most of the work. They did some of the work. It was kind of a really a messy business. I have done things where I have 6 different vendors in large roles, all working at once, and it can be hideous. Sometimes it works okay, but it really takes a strong hand on it. But in this one, this other company did the requirements. Now this was for a large system. It was business to business. It was very, very important to the company. They didn't have automation before. They were putting automation in place for managing the relationships with their customers and a lot of other things. And one of the requirements was reporting. And this other company, which will go nameless, but they're a very, very large consulting company. One of the largest in the world. Based in Ireland. Anyway. So what they did is they said, reporting requirement. There will be reporting. I kid you not, that's what it said on the spreadsheet. Because they did the requirements on a spreadsheet, and that was it. Do you think maybe, could we break this down to operational reporting, financial reporting, crisis reporting? I don't know. Could we bullet point this down one more level? No, it's just reporting. No problem. It's a major company. And this is it. So when they actually got in to start doing the reporting, and I will tell you, reporting itself was not in my scope. For what I was doing, for my responsibility, not my scope. So did I let this go a little bit? Yes, I did. Did I let them go destroy themselves? Yes, I did. And then that brought me, I'm sorry, but this is the dirty tricks we play. I let them do it to themselves. And then I just go ahead and gain some credibility when I say, look, I don't think this is real requirements. And the customer says, oh no, we trust them. They're really, really good. No problem. I'll keep my area clean. And then finally they realized, oh my goodness. And actually somebody from the customer that wasn't involved before came in and said, what were you thinking? It was great. But they actually had to produce reports and they had nothing. I mean, they really had nothing. So you got to get the scope right. And scope is requirements. And if I were going to and I've been asked this lots of times, what's the number one cause of project failure? You don't know what the requirements are. Bad requirements, wrong requirements, missing requirements, vague requirements. There's and I won't get this exactly right, there's a verse in the Bible that says, actually it's in the New Testament for that. It's in Paul's letter. And it says, essentially, if the trumpet call is not clear, who will prepare for battle? In the old days, they used a trumpet to get everybody going. If somebody bobbles that trumpet and goes, it doesn't do a good job, nobody runs to grab their spears and their shields. I mean, it just doesn't happen. And it's the same thing. The requirements, in a sense, of your call to battle. I mean, that's your thing that you're going to go do. And if it's unclear, you've got no chance. Because, I mean, it's like, I'm going to take a vacation. Where are you going? Yeah, I don't know. When are you leaving? Now. Okay. But you don't know where you're going. Nope. But I'm going to get there because I've got motivation. I'm really, really motivated. I'm going to do it. It's just not going to happen. So, one of the things is when you're looking at scope, you better make darn sure your scope is really clear. You have to really make sure you know. And if you take over something that's failed or failing, that's where I always start. I actually don't usually get into the stuff of should we be doing this project, because nobody's going to give me that choice. This is it. Anybody here not know the serenity prayer? Give me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, the courage to change everything, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay? You just have to accept there's some things you can't fix. There's some things you can. You put a lot of effort into those, and you better darn well know the difference between them. Because if you don't, you'll end up wasting your time on something that you'll never win at. Or you'll let some opportunity just go by and completely miss it. See, God can grab it onto your thing, You kind of went, okay, here's my window. I'm going to take it. I do that on the freeway sometimes. There's just that gap. I got one chance. Let's go down the freeway with a bunch of kids in the van. This big camping trip thing. I don't know, there's like 10, I've got a 12-passenger van. There's like a bunch of kids in there. And I'm driving down the road, and there's smoke appears up on the freeway ahead of me. And I'm driving, and somebody has spun out, and all these cars are spinning, and I've got this huge, heavy van that does not stop well. And there was a gap, and I just shot the gap, maybe. It went right through. And as I'm going through, I'm seeing people spinning, and you could see people holding the wheel going, ah! It was all slow motion, just like, they say. And you could actually see people's expressions as they're spinning around on each side, and there was just a gap. It was like, the truck liner, the bed liner came out of somebody's truck on the freeway. It just flew up, and they were all trying to dodge it, and y'all lost control. I don't know if anybody hit anybody. I don't think they did. It looked like they all just sort of spread all over the road. There was smoke everywhere from burning rubber. But sometimes you see that gap, and you just go right through it. So, requirements, if I get in there and it's a mess, the first thing I'm going to assume is that people don't know what they ought to be doing. And if you listen to your people, my last team was about 40 people, and I got lots of good feedback. I've primarily done the technical stuff. They'll tell you, I don't know what I ought to be doing, but they also have to be comfortable enough with you that you can do that. Because if you scare them, they won't tell you. Because why? Because they're afraid. Just as an aside, don't let people on your teams be afraid. Do everything you can. Let them know they have one friend. It doesn't mean you'll do things for them. It doesn't mean that you'll fix things when they mess them up. It doesn't mean that you'll defend them when they're completely wrong. But at least let them tell you the truth. Because if people don't tell you the truth, you're flying blind. And we can't afford that. That's the worst thing in the world is when you don't know. I've been very blessed that people on my teams have always told me. I mean, they'd say, watch out for this. Actually, I've had people on my teams lots of times say, watch out for Bill. I don't mean this Bill. But watch out for, watch out for Linda over here, because man, she'll bury you. Oh, okay. You like stories too, right? I mean, I think it's more interesting than some lecture stuff. What's our ending time?
We schedule for 11.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure I don't. And I have some things I have to get to, and I got to make sure I do that. So, I was doing integration stuff. That's where we're trying to make the different systems work, because not everybody's IT. We're trying to make all the different systems work together. And it was a lady off in Canada. I try to generalize these, so I'm not giving anything away, because this might get broadcasters. Anyway, I don't remember who it was on my team, but somebody on my team or my extended team said, watch out for her. She's deadly politically. She will bury you. And she'll lie, she'll cheat. And by the way, she's having an affair with this guy over in this department. It's like, I don't need to know this, thank you. But it meant there was a connection there, which could be good or bad. If they have a falling out, and I know this, and they have a falling out, or if there's an argument on a conference call, I can detect what's going on, and that may help me. And again, helping me is helping the project or the program. All that matters is for me to have the success that I have to have on behalf of my client, employer, customer, whatever you want to do it, and that my team finishes successfully and raises their self-esteem. Because there's nothing that makes your team happier than success. You want a happy team? Buying them cupcakes is not enough. Give them success. Let them win. People that win will stick with you. And I've been blessed with loyalty from people. And a lot of that's because we win together. If we lose together. If we win together. Anyway, with this one, so I was on this conference call, and she'd had to take a decision. It was her decision to make. She made the decision. I got it in writing an email. Because I do that. Per our conversation, we are going to do this at your direction. Please let me know if this is not correct. Important. Please let me know if this is not correct. It's in my sent box. On the conference call with 20 people, she lied. Oh, I never said that. You did this on your own, you're an idiot, you know. And it was like, yeah, I've forgotten now who it was that told me, but thank you very much. Pull it up, sent folder, broadcast to meeting notice. I just now forwarded your email to everybody on this call. 5 seconds later, everybody goes, it looks like took care of that problem. So, anyway, disagreements over requirements, but cover yourself and know where the dangerous people are. If your people are not afraid of you, or if they feel brave with you, there's a difference. Not being afraid doesn't mean they feel brave. If they will walk, there's multiple reasons they'll do this. One of the reasons is they feel brave because they feel supported. Other times, people feel brave because they care.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is funny. I worked with this guy who was a Marine back in Vietnam and had known combat, severely wounded. Very interesting, difficult, wonderful person. He was just one. He had a handlebar mustache. His idea of fun was being in his basement playing with toy soldiers. He would reenact various famous battles and do stuff like this, and that was his thing. And because we talked, I kind of understood that. So I went to tell him this story to illustrate a point, and he said, oh yeah, it was this battle, and it was this is the general, and here's the guy. I mean, he knew all this stuff. It was incredible. So there's the story of Napoleon. I don't think it's apocryphal. I think this one's real, especially because he seemed to know it. He needed his troops to take a bridge. And it was under heavy fire, and none of his generals wanted to go across. They were all hanging back. His solution? He charged across the bridge and shouted, "Forward to save your general." If you have the right relationship with your people, they will go forward to save you. And I've actually told my people before, if we don't get this, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. And I like working with you. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to leave you wonderful people. But we've got to win. And it's going to just kill us, but we're going to have to pull this off. And I have people that worked day and night. I mean, I'm thinking about one in particular, where somebody else messed up and missed a requirement, and we had to go fill it in. And it wasn't fair, it wasn't reasonable, but we had to do it. And everybody absolutely killed themselves to make it happen. And I'd like to think it's all for me, but it's not. I mean, they were achievers. These are people that wanted to be successful. But there was a sense of loyalty there too. So it's good stuff. So look for the requirements. That's where your problem's going to be most of the time. If you're later into it, the cost of a missed requirement, you know, goes up over the life of a project. I'm sure you've studied that there's that nasty looking curve. Your cost, the earlier you catch it, the better. But remember, catching it is not resolving. Catching it is not taking action. It's the taking action that cuts the curve off. Because I hate to think the number of times I saw something early and didn't take the action early. So take the action early if you see it. Okay, another one is time. Just thinking about that one, what are some examples? Sometimes somebody's got a reason to delay something. If I've got a contract company that's helping and they could stretch it out and get an extension of the contract, do they want to do that? So they're not always motivated to finish on time. But what are they going to do? They can't be the cause of it, because you might say, look, you guys were the cause of this. You made us 2 weeks late. You have to eat those 2 weeks. So what are they going to do? Blame it on somebody else? Blame it on you? They'll find some way of saying, well, there's a reason why, and it's not us. And that blame game goes around like crazy. I would like to have some way around that, but I don't really have one. I mean, if you can find one, that's good. But a lot of the time, there's no way around that cycle. Everybody's going to blame somebody. So all you can really do is document like crazy. Remember the email?
I was going to say, document. Yeah, we do document too. As soon as we see the sign of slippage, we start documenting the reason of the change of the dates, even by a week.
Yeah. Right? And along with that, then you get into, okay, self-interest. How far do you let this go before you raise the flag, before you change the status from green to yellow or yellow to red? There's people that really don't want you to put it red. They want to suppress that. Well, let's not panic anybody. Objective criteria for yellow and red is a good thing. And I'm saying yellow and red because it seems like it's so popular for status. I instinctively don't like it. I don't know that I have a better alternative. So okay, fine, yellow and red. I've had places that were tolerant of yellow, but they call everything yellow instead of red. They've never let it get to red. Objective criteria. How many people in here feel they do not know objective criteria for yellow and red? Okay, that gives me an excuse to say something. And you can, and it's okay to disagree, and maybe we'll come up with something better.
We just have different ones.
Mm-hmm.
We just have different definitions.
Well, yeah, but sometimes there's
Yeah.
just no objective. Well, it feels yellow.
Yeah.
Okay, yellow, it might slip. Red, it slipped. I mean, that's pretty objective
Mm-hmm.
at that point. Does that make sense? You'd be surprised how much of that becomes subjective.
I know, and recently, just working with a vendor, they argue that even when they miss a date, it's not red.
And it depends on what the red is tied to. If I have 4 things that have to happen in sequence,
Mm-hmm.
and the first one is late, but they say, well, we can make it up in the second one and the third one. They'll say, well, it's not red because the end date is still okay. And I might be okay with that if I really believe it. Or maybe I put those under an indent and say, I've got a top level green,
Mm-hmm.
but I've got one, this first one's
Yep.
red with an explanation.
Yep.
We know we can make this up. Then the second one starts up, and if it goes yellow, this better not be green on the top anymore. That makes sense? So there's the different ways of approaching it. But the thing that I really want to focus on is along that conflict management. You've got some boss that says, I don't want to see a red. Well, but it's late. I don't want to see a red. That'll get me in trouble, then people will start asking questions. Anybody here read Catch-22? This was big back in the 70s. But there's a lot of that in there, a lot of people that are just doing things to cover themselves. It's horrible in a lot of ways. I mean, it's not a happy story. But it's kind of interesting, this kind of stuff that goes on, where people are trying to protect themselves, they're trying to advance themselves, and it's this crazy, chaotic mess. So it's life. Cost. Big one. There are, oh my goodness. If you're doing something where you're using a vendor, the vendor is there to maximize their profits. They're not there for anything else. And whatever else they tell you, they're lying, because the fact is they're there to maximize their profits. You have to know when it's in their best interest to do something and when it's not. And when it's in their best interest, then you lean on them heavily. I'll give you an example. Is one of the ones, I've done a few things that were market entry deals where we had to be successful in a new market space. When that happens, we are at a disadvantage, as the provider of services, we're at a disadvantage because we want something, and that thing we want is not necessarily going to allow us to make a great profit. We're willing to take a loss in order to get there. So when that happens, I've seen customers that actually didn't understand the dynamic